What if you could lead more effectively and go home on time? Welcome to the Lightbulb. I'm Zoe Thompson, leadership and performance coach, and each week I bring you 3 practical insights from my work helping impact-driven leaders transform from reactive to intentional leadership so they can finish work on time and take guilt-free time off, creating success that feels as good as it looks. Let's jump in. Welcome back to episode 24 after a week break. Wasn't sure whether I was going to take a break for a week or not. I did leave it open to see whether or not anything came up that I wanted to talk about. As it was, I was actually quite happy, chilling, relaxing, and just enjoying some time out for my birthday, my son's birthday, and both conveniently timed right before the bank holiday weekend meant that I was able to have a nice few days off, which was good. And the sunshine too, always a bonus. So I've been back with client work this week. Before I get into my 3 light bulbs, the Elevate Your Efficiency program is now live with the April cohort, which is great. Next program is in September. You can sign up to that in advance. So I appreciate with leadership, especially if you're looking at your company sponsoring your place, then the more time, the better. So the next program is in September. If you don't want to wait until then, the leadership community doors are always open. You can join at any point. It is pay as you go, so there's no commitment. You can also pay upfront for the year. And if you do that, you get the 2 months free and a coaching call as a bonus if you sign up for the 12 months. That is also on offer. Okay, let's get into the light bulbs. Light bulb 1. This came up in the alumni for the program. You'll hear me talk about this once a month because we have a monthly call, all included. When you sign up for the program, the alumni calls are included, and they're there for people who've completed the program to keep that momentum going. And it's really nice actually to bring different cohorts together. It's also really nice to hear how people are getting on, how they are continuing to implement and use what they've learned, and all of the wins that are coming as a result of that. And in particular, where their team are starting to implement what they've learned on the program too. So, I mean, that's a great bonus. Not only are the leaders who are completing the program being able to implement things and make changes, they're teaching their teams as well. So, huge benefit. This first light bulb came up in the alumni call this week, and we were talking about busyness, the word busy. And we talked about it from 2 different perspectives, which is why it's being covered on 2 light bulbs this week. The meeting was on the Tuesday, so after the bank holiday weekend, and we had that conversation the first day back. It was the lunchtime of the Tuesday, so we'd already had the morning talking about how busy people were and trying to play catch up, trying to get ahead of themselves, but also with it being a 4-day week. However, the conversation initially came up because one of the group mentioned how they had noticed that they were saying, "I'm busy," when people were asking how they were, and how the response of, I'm in a positive way, with a positive tone, with a positive way of saying it, they were showing an awareness that whilst it's a positive thing. I'm busy, I'm working on lots of different things, that they were kind of concerned that it might come across as being dismissive to their team. And we were saying that, this probably isn't unique to their industry. It's something that we all say. And I think from my perspective, especially in this economy where job security isn't what it has been in the past, we feel like sometimes we have to justify our position. So when we say we're busy, we're showing that we are contributing, we're showing that our role is significant, and actually us being in that role and the contribution that we give is significant. And whilst there's a good positive intention there, it can become habit. That first response of, "How are you doing?" "I'm fine." "I'm busy." Or, "How are you doing?" "Things are good." "I'm really busy." The person who brought this up was showing that they had this heightened awareness of whether or not them saying they were busy might potentially have unintended consequences of this being a barrier to their team when their team come to them. Also noticing how often they were saying it, even though it wasn't necessarily true. Now, that's not saying that they're not busy, because they are, but saying that they were recognizing that it's an automatic answer, whether it's true or not. And what their concern was that if their team come in and talk to them and they talk about being busy, does this mean that it's potentially creating a barrier? Is it going to impact their accessibility? Is it going to impact the perception of psychological safety and being able to approach them when they need something? And what we were talking about as a group was whether or not what you say is what your team hear, and the awareness around that for us as leaders in really checking in that what I'm saying is that what is being received, and checking that that communication is effective. And that when we say we're busy, that it's not a sign we're not okay with being interrupted. This led on to the conversation, which I'm going to come on to in Lightbulb 2. And I think it's interesting. And for me, the reason why this is one of my chosen light bulbs for this week is that we need to be aware that the language that we use is really powerful. And so when we talk about feeling overwhelmed, are we overwhelmed, or are we doing our best to prioritize what we have on our plate? When we talk about being busy, are we busy, or is there a different word that we can use to describe how things are? Or can we add to that response to add a little bit more context that helps our teams and our peers and colleagues to understand what that actually means for us in that moment and in that week? We want to make sure that we are opening doors, not closing them. And what we want to do is invite conversations about priorities, invite conversations around what that busyness looks like and where there might still be capacity, so it doesn't feel like we're shutting things down and it's not open to being perceived in that way. That was Lightbulb 1, and Lightbulb 2 leads on from that. The conversation continued in the call, talking about busyness and talking about how different people can perceive busyness in different ways. The people on the call are very positive people. So even they were saying that actually when they use busy, it's not necessarily a stress or an overwhelm busy. It's more, things are busy, or I'm busy, not necessarily meaning anything negative by it. And as we were talking it through, we shifted the perspective a little bit to what do we understand as leaders when our teams tell us that they are busy, and how do we know whether that is a busy overwhelm, busy stressed, or busy in a way that means that they're being really productive and that they're working at that level that we want them to work, because we do want people to be busy, but we wouldn't want people to be overwhelmed or stressed. And this is how the conversation then developed. We talked about how not all busy is the same. And we talked about identifying different types of busy. And as a group, we talked about what for us was 3 different categories. So we have thriving busy. So you're enjoying the variety, you're managing things well, you're energized by the work. And I think a lot of us shared the same perspective that actually we're better when we're busy. We're better when there's a little bit of pressure to get things done with a deadline. We don't procrastinate as much. We are more focused. We're more clear in what it is that we're doing. So this is definitely a thriving level of busy. Then we talked about manageable busy, a good level. It's okay. It's not necessarily enjoyable, that we accept that there are occasions where we are just about heads above water. It's not a permanent situation. It might be a peak period. It might be an impending deadline or coming to the end of a project. It's not forever. And it's manageable. We can manage it because of the amount of busyness or the longevity of that busyness. And then finally, we talked about the overwhelming type of busy. So you drowning, something needs to change. The problem is it is not sustainable. It is a level of pressure that means that we're not performing, or the individual is not able to perform at a high level. It was a really interesting conversation, and we were all in agreement that actually that word busy, it needs context. It needs that descriptor so that we as leaders can understand which type of busy they are experiencing. We want them to be a thriving busy. We want to be able to protect that, and we want to make sure that it doesn't tip into the level of busyness where it is overwhelming and creates a stress response. We don't want our people in that space. We recognize that actually there will be occasions where they're in that manageable busy, and it might be that we are able to support them as a leader to be more efficient, to either take certain things off of their plate or help them to deprioritize. The result of that conversation, which was a really interesting discussion on why I love these calls, is recognizing as a leader what we were taking away. So if we pair light bulbs 1 and 2 together, we're pairing up being very conscious, being very aware of when we respond with the word, I am busy, and adding context to it so that our people and our peers understand where we are at, and to see that as a positive and recognize that we are still accessible and approachable and there to support. And secondly, from the perspective of when we're having conversations with our team, we want to check in and ask coaching questions to find out where they are at and what level of busyness they are at, so that we can understand what they need and what they need to do and how we can support them to be able to take that action to get it to a place where it is a thriving busy, not the stressed and overwhelmed level of busyness. And light bulb 3, the time perception gap. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are in our first week of the Elevate Your Efficiency program. Now, the first week is an onboarding week. Gives everybody time to make sure they've got access to what they need to. They've got access to the systems. There's a welcome message for them to watch. We want to make sure that they have a couple of days to get themselves set up without missing out on anything, so that when we get to the first week, everybody is good to go with the first masterclass. And that first masterclass is the time audit. So important. And as I say to them, it is the heavy lifting of the program, because we want to make sure that every individual coming into the program understands where their time is going. We need to make sure that they are clear on where their time is going and where they want their time to be. It's all centered around the AAA time framework, which is the free download on the website. So you can do this yourself. Now, I ran the offer last week where I packaged this up with the AAA time framework workbook and a coaching call and an AI prompt. So it was great to be able to offer that out as a package for people to be able to do this for themselves. This is the first week on the program because it's so important that people understand where their time is going. And proof of that is that when we've done this in previous cohorts, the people that have been doing the audit, there is a genuine surprise of where they thought their time was going and where it's actually going can be a difference of almost 40%. Like between 30 or 40% is misjudged in terms of where their time is going. So you think that you're spending a certain amount of time on strategic work. You think you're spending a certain amount of time with your teams, being accessible, being available. You think that your time is going where it needs to go. And then the time audit tells you where it's actually going. And for some people, like the percentage of the reactive firefighting time is a lot higher. Like they knew it was high, but it was coming in a lot higher than they were expecting. And that's the challenge. We need to be able to really understand where our time is going so that we can start to make changes. And we also want to be very clear on where we want our time to go so that the changes that we make take us to where we want to go. If we don't have that clear data, if we don't have that clarity around what it actually looks like, and we don't spend time really understanding how we want it to look, the changes that we make are probably not going to get us from where we are to where we want to be, and potentially add more problems to it. So the clearer we are, the clearer the data, the more we can fix the actual problem rather than the perceived problem. So a lot of people put this under the umbrella of time management skills, and it is about managing your time with the data that tells us what the reality actually is. And that's why the time audit is the foundation of the entire 8-week program. You can't fix what you can't see. So we have to get the data so that we can see things really, really clearly. And then we can measure it again at the end of the 8 weeks. And that helps us to see now where the time is going and double check in. It is moving in the direction of where we want it to be. Although the work continues long after the program has finished. This is why the alumni calls become important. The work needs to continue. Most people are saving at least an hour a day within the first 2 weeks of the program. And we keep building on that over the 8 weeks. And that time saving improves and gets better as the program goes on. And what they're then able to do is to reinvest that time into where they want it to go instead. So that's what we've been doing this week. And as I said, it is the free download on the website, so you can go through the workbook. It was packaged up as a very special offer last week and was offered out to 3 people for free, and it will be available openly on a special offer in the next week. So that's going to go out to the newsletter. So there's a good reminder there, if you are not on the mailing list, to go to the website, download the free workbook. That will also add you into the mailing list, and you will be the first to see these offers. And actually, sometimes you're the only people to see these offers. So it's certainly worth doing. But that's my third light bulb for this week. Get really clear on where your time's going. Whether you do that through your own assessment or whether you use the AAA time framework workbook, check where your time is going, reflect on where you want it to be. It is a game changer because we're so reactive. We show up, we do the work, we go to the meetings, we talk to the people, we answer the questions, we firefight, we problem solve, we make the decisions, and then we go home. Are we spending our time on what we want to spend our time on? We don't know unless we measure where that time is going. And we need to then spend time really thinking about where our time and our energy and our focus needs to be going for us to lead in the way that we want to lead. Those are my 3 light bulbs. What is your light bulb? What will your next step be? And remember, for your next step, keep it small, keep it simple, and keep it specific. I'd love to hear from you. If you are happy to share, just pop me a message. I'd love to hear what's come up for you. Have a great week ahead. We've got a full 5 days. We need to do a whole full week this week. I hope it's a very good week for you. And I'll be back with another episode next week for you.
And those are your 3 takeaways for this week. Before you go, ask yourself, what's my light bulb moment from this? And now that I know what I know, what will I do differently? Choose one action, however small, and commit to it. That's how overwhelmed and reactive becomes aligned and intentional. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of The Lightbulb.